It was exactly 1:57 a.m. when my old Ford suddenly died on Route 12. The engine made a horrible choking sound, then everything shut off. The headlights, the heater, the radio, all dead. But right before the radio went silent, I heard something that still gives me nightmares. A woman's voice, very weak, very broken. Run. Then nothing. I was alone in the deep woods of Maine. There were no houses, no cars, no lights. Just endless black trees around me. I grabbed my phone. No signal. 3% battery. The cold wind outside was getting stronger every second. Then suddenly, something hit the back of my car so hard the whole vehicle shook. I froze. Slowly, I looked in the mirror. Nothing. Just darkness. Then it happened again. This time, the roof of the car bent slightly inward, like something very heavy had climbed on top. My heart started pounding. Then I heard it. Slow footsteps, walking across the roof of my car. The sound stopped directly above my head. And then, something with long fingernails slowly scratched across the windshield. I looked up and saw a pale, upside-down face staring at me through the glass. Its eyes were completely black. I screamed and jumped out of the car. The freezing air hit my face hard. For a few seconds, I just stood there, breathing heavily. Then I noticed something terrifying. The woods were completely silent. No wind, no insects, no animals. Nothing. It felt like the entire forest was watching me. Then far away between the trees, I saw a faint yellow light. A house. I grabbed my flashlight and started walking toward it. The deeper I went into the woods, the stranger everything felt. Every time I stopped walking, I heard footsteps behind me stop too. But whenever I turned around, there was nobody there. After almost 30 minutes, I finally reached the house. It was an old farmhouse made of dark, rotting wood. The windows were crooked. The roof looked half collapsed. But the scariest thing wasn't the house. It was the footprints. Small footprints. Children's footprints. Dozens of them. All leading into the house. None coming out. A cold feeling moved through my entire body. I slowly knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Very slowly. The door opened by itself, and standing there was a thin, old woman. Her skin was pale like ash. Her eyes looked sunken deep into her face, and she never blinked, not once. I nervously asked, "Ma'am, my car broke down. Can I use your phone?" She stared at me for several long seconds without moving, then slowly raised one long finger and pointed inside the house. The second I stepped in, slam. The front door shut behind me by itself. The smell inside almost made me throw up. Rotting meat, wet dirt, old blood, and something else I couldn't recognize. The woman silently walked down a dark hallway. I followed her. But after a few seconds, I realized something horrifying. I couldn't hear her footsteps. I looked down, and my blood ran cold. Her feet were floating slightly above the floor. She wasn't walking. She was gliding. I stopped moving. Slowly. The woman turned her head completely backward toward me. Her neck twisted farther than any human neck should. Then she smiled. Her mouth stretched wider and wider until the skin on her cheeks started tearing open. Black blood dripped down her face. "Phone," she whispered. Her voice sounded like many people talking at once. I followed her into a small living room. An old black rotary phone sat on a table in the corner. I rushed toward it and picked up the receiver. At first, there was only static. Then, a child crying softly, like his mouth was covered, and then a whisper came through the phone. "Help me." I dropped the receiver instantly. At that exact moment, something heavy moved upstairs. Scrape, like a giant object being dragged across wood. Then, thud. A massive footstep shook the house. Thud. Another one. The stairs began creaking loudly. I slowly pointed my flashlight toward the staircase, and that's when I saw him. A giant man standing at the top of the stairs, at least 7 feet tall. His head was covered with a dirty burlap sack stained with dark blood, and in his hand was a huge rusty meat hook. Then the sack moved slightly, and I heard children laughing inside it. Slow, broken, crazy laughter. That was the moment I realized I was never leaving this house alive. The giant man slowly started walking down the stairs. Thud, thud. Every step made the wooden floor shake beneath my feet. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The sack covering his head twitched strangely, like something was moving underneath it. Then, suddenly, the old woman vanished. 1 second she was beside me, the next second she was gone. The giant tilted his head toward me, and from inside the sack, I heard whispering. Not one voice, many voices, children's voices, all speaking at the same time. "He woke us up. He can hear us. Make him sleep." I stumbled backward in panic. The giant suddenly lifted the rusty meat hook and slammed it into the wall beside my head. Bang! Wood exploded everywhere. I screamed and ran. I sprinted through the dark hallway while hearing the giant chase after me slowly. Not running, walking, like he already knew I couldn't escape. The old floorboards creaked loudly beneath me. The smell inside the house kept getting worse. Rotting meat, wet mold, blood. So much blood. I reached the kitchen and slammed the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the flashlight. The kitchen was freezing cold and completely dark. I quickly searched for a back door, but then my flashlight landed on something in the middle of the room, a wooden table, and lying on top of it was a little boy, maybe 7 years old, wearing blue pajamas. At first I thought he was dead. Then I saw his chest slowly rising and falling. He was alive, but his eyes and his mouth had been sewn shut with thick black thread. My stomach twisted. The boy suddenly started struggling violently when he heard me. He tried to scream, but only muffled crying came out of his sewn mouth. Then I noticed something even worse. There were more tables around the room, and every table had deep scratches on them, as if people had tried desperately to escape while tied down. I backed away slowly. That's when I heard a wet sound above me. Drip, drip. Something cold landed on my shoulder. I touched it carefully. Black blood. My flashlight slowly moved upward toward the ceiling, and I nearly died from fear. The old woman was crawling across the ceiling like a giant spider. Her arms and legs bent in impossible directions. Her long hair hung down over her face, and her smile. Her smile stretched all the way to her ears now. Pieces of skin hung loose from her cheeks. Inside her open mouth, I could see tiny human teeth moving deep in her throat. She stared directly at me, then whispered, "You looked at them." Suddenly, the kitchen door behind me burst open. Boom! The giant entered the room. The ceiling light above him flickered weakly for 1 second, and I finally saw the stains on his clothes clearly. Blood. Fresh blood. Everywhere. He slowly raised the meat hook again. The little boy on the table started shaking harder. Tears rolled from his sewn eyes. Then the giant spoke for the first time. His voice sounded wet and broken, like he was drowning. You were told not to wake them. The old woman dropped from the ceiling directly in front of me. Crash! Her body bent unnaturally when she landed. Bones cracked loudly inside her arms, but she kept smiling. Then she began crawling toward me on all fours at terrifying speed. I grabbed a wooden chair and smashed it into her face. Crack! She slammed into the wall, screaming. But her scream didn't sound human. It sounded like dozens of children crying together. I turned and ran toward the small kitchen window. I tried opening it. Locked. I pulled harder. Nothing. Behind me, I could hear the giant dragging the meat hook across the floor. Screech! Closer. Closer. The old woman suddenly laughed behind me. You can't leave. I panicked and grabbed another chair. With all my strength, I smashed the window open. Glass exploded everywhere. Cold rain and wind rushed inside. Without thinking, I threw myself through the broken window into the darkness outside. Sharp glass sliced my arms and face as I hit the muddy ground hard, but I didn't stop. I got up and started running through the woods as fast as I could. Behind me, I heard the giant roaring in anger, and above me, branches started snapping rapidly. The old woman was moving through the trees, following me. I ran through the woods like a madman. Branches cut across my face, mud pulled at my boots, rain poured heavily through the trees. But I didn't stop running. Behind me, I could still hear them, the giant's heavy footsteps crashing through the forest. And above me, the old woman moved through the treetops like some animal. Fast, too fast. Every few seconds, I heard her horrible laugh echo through the dark woods, sometimes from the left, sometimes from directly above me, sometimes right behind my ear. You woke them. You shouldn't have come. They're hungry now. I kept running until my lungs felt like they were on fire. Then suddenly, my foot caught on a tree root. I slammed hard onto the ground and rolled onto the edge of the highway. For a second, I just lay there gasping for air. Then bright headlights appeared in the distance. A truck. A huge semi-truck speeding down the road. I jumped up and waved my arms desperately. Help! Please stop! The truck blasted its horn loudly. Screech! Its brakes screamed as it stopped inches away from me. I quickly climbed into the passenger seat. The driver was a large man wearing a baseball cap and an old flannel shirt. He looked at me silently, no emotion on his face at all. I was shaking violently. "There are people in the woods!" I shouted. "Please, just drive!" The driver said nothing. He slowly pressed the gas pedal. The truck started moving again. I leaned back in the seat, trying to catch my breath. Rain slammed against the windshield. The dark forest slowly disappeared behind us. For the first time all night, I thought I was finally safe. Then I noticed the smell. At first it was faint, but within seconds, the truck cabin filled with the exact same horrible smell from the farmhouse. Rotting meat, mothballs, old blood. My entire body went cold. Slowly, I turned toward the driver. He wasn't looking at the road anymore. He was staring directly at me, smiling, a long, thin smile. Then he slowly lifted one hand to adjust his cap. That's when I saw his fingers. Long, unnaturally long, covered in fresh mud. My heart nearly stopped. I looked down at his flannel shirt. It had the exact same faded pattern as the old woman's dress. No, 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 no. I slowly turned toward the back of the truck cabin, and under the dim yellow light, I saw it. The blood-stained burlap sack, sitting on the small bed. Next to it, a giant spool of black thread, and a long sewing needle covered in fresh blood. I froze completely. The driver's smile slowly widened. Then I noticed something even worse. His mouth was stretching too far, farther than any human mouth could. The skin near his cheeks started tearing open. Black liquid dripped from inside his mouth. Then, in that same wet, broken voice from the house, he whispered, "We told you not to wake them." Suddenly, scratch! Something sharp dragged across the roof of the truck. The driver kept smiling. Another scratch came from above, then another, and another, like dozens of fingernails crawling across the metal roof. I looked up in horror. Small, muddy handprints slowly appeared on the inside of the windshield. Tiny children's handprints, one by one. Then, a soft crying sound came from behind me. I turned slowly toward the sleeper cabin and saw the little boy from the kitchen sitting upright on the bed. His eyes and mouth were still sewn shut, but now, his head was turned directly toward me, and he was crying. Blood slowly leaked through the black stitches. The truck suddenly swerved violently off the highway. We crashed through wooden barriers and drove straight back into the dark forest. Trees slammed against both sides of the truck. The driver started laughing loudly now, that horrible, broken laugh. The little boy behind me began shaking violently. Then slowly, very slowly, the stitches on his mouth started ripping open by themselves. One by one, tiny drops of blood rolled down his face. The driver looked at me with wide black eyes and whispered, "They've been waiting for someone new." Then the truck lights suddenly died. Everything went black. The last thing I heard before the truck disappeared deep into the woods was the sound of children laughing all around me in the darkness.